We need to learn how the ego and the soul can live in dance and write in duality at the same time. Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan, and this is episode 194 of the podcast. It's August 6th, 2025, as I record this. Today's episode is all about ego meeting soul, the inner and the outer world of writing. And in our last episode of the mini podcast series, The Book You Were Born to Write, we listened to those first whispers of the book inside you, that idea. We honored that quiet knowing, that call to finally write the book that's been circling your spirit. And today, we're stepping into that next phase, the moment where the whisper gets louder and the fear does too. Because the truth is, wanting to be seen and fearing that same visibility often lives side by side in the writer's hearts. There's always, it seems to me, this kind of not fight, but like our ego really does a number on us. It does its job. It wants to protect us. So there's this constant like awareness. I don't want to say battle, but like we need to learn how the ego and the soul can live in dance and write in duality at the same time so that it's not such a hard, defined, like swinging from one to the other or ignoring one for the other. So that's what we'll talk about a little bit today. First, I want to thank all of our existing patrons for believing in our work here on the podcast and offline. And you can become a patron of the arts at patreon.com/Valerie Isan, IHSAN. I've got books over there, writing instruction, coaching, planning, planner nerd nights. Those are fun. Those planner plays, monthly reflections, those are always free for any member on my Patreon page. You don't have to be a paid member to access those, but I don't list them as public. So you have to be a free member in order to get access to those dates. So you can also go to patreon.com/strange air stories for short stories and novellas in the paranormal mystery genre written by Erick. Okay, author update. It's been kind of wild and crazy over here in my house, and maybe you've seen some alluding to that on Instagram or on Facebook. Also, I'm sharing it more with my patrons a little bit more in depth, but my husband did lose his job last week, so that's been a little bit of an upheaval. I think we're going to treat this as a good thing. So if you want to hear more in depth on that, then you can, again, find me on Patreon. I just finished reading Austin Kleon's book, Keep Going, 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad. I just finished it yesterday. So the next two books on my bedside table are I'm going to pick back up The Creative Act by Rick Rubin and also Anne Abel. She was on our podcast a few months ago, several months ago now, and reading her new memoir called High Hopes about following Bruce Springsteen through on his Australian concert tour. So that sounds super fun. The book comes out next month. She will be on the podcast again as a guest in October. So you can look for her book, High Hopes, in September, and you can look for her here on the podcast in October. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the episode. I want to start by talking about what stops us from writing. And it's not usually time, although that's a handy excuse. It's not a lack of talent. It's not even really a lack of discipline, although arguably I think accountability helps us keep writing. But it's really those shadow voices, those like inner critic, the inner editor, if you will, that rise up when we start getting close to something real. Things like maybe you say, what if people think I'm full of myself? Or who am I to write this? That's one from my books. I keep saying that to myself. Um, or maybe you're just, you know, really want to write from your depths and from your soul, and you pour your soul and your blood and tears into this page, and then what if nobody cares? That's another hard one too. So anyway, not writing is not laziness, it's vulnerability. And like I said at the beginning of the intro, it is our ego doing its job. It's trying to protect us from pain, from rejection, maybe from exposure. But it's really important to remember that the ego is not our enemy. He's just he, she, they, them. They're just trying to keep us safe. Um, there's a part of you that's learned to people please, to perform, to protect. And when you start doing something new, writing something new, maybe something sacred, that part of you gets nervous. So, soul-led writing, which I'm trying to embody more, is not just about ideas. It is really about that embodiment, that showing up on the page with radical honesty. And that type of embodiment really does mean being seen. And that scares the ego. So we don't need to like kill the ego and be all dramatic about it. We just need to give it a new job. And I really like this idea of it being having a new job. So we can let our egos become in charge of structure. It can be something that organizes your message. Ego can take care of your outlining, the deadlines, the goals, that more linear, listy part of yourself. Ego really thrives there. It has a great time doing jobs like that. So you can let your ego support the container, and you can let your soul guide the content of what you're writing. So this is more where you can write in alignment. And that's really all we want to do is live and write and breathe in alignment with our values, with um, the way we're meant to be and live. So yeah, writing from alignment is that structure and spirit. It's that mastery and mystery. It's ego and soul working together, in that same duality. Um, Quick story. Earlier this year, I was working on creating some content for my audience, and I felt I felt good while I was writing it. It was raw and truthful and a little bit exposing, like being vulnerable is hard for us to do, especially when the ego is saying, wait, 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 wait. Do you really want to say that? But, even though I was feeling good while I was writing, every time you know, tried to come up with a proper conclusion, or when I thought about posting it or something, I would get afraid, afraid of what people would think of me, afraid of, afraid of how I would, not how I would change, but how it would change how people saw me. And I think to some degree, when we have a little bit of a public persona, like artists and musicians and writers do, or if you show up in social media at all for any reason that as part of your brand, we are we feel sometimes that we're limited by the container, that we've created for ourselves, whatever that is, our brand. And so maybe we feel like we're not allowed to be anything besides that. So that's another thing that was kind of stopping me from wanting to post stuff that I've been posting lately. So I just had to have a little moment with myself, pause, maybe you can light a candle. I didn't light a candle this time, but I did a lot of journaling around it and asking spirit, like, who is this content for? And what do they need to hear? And what am I protecting? Who am I protecting if I don't say those things and don't put that content out? So what I heard back from my guides, from my soul, from my inner knowing is that the content I put out, whether it's in a book or in an essay or a blog post or a social media post, is medicine for somebody, even if it's just one person. But it's only going to be that if I allow it to be seen. So I sent the email, I've been posting the content, and the response I'm getting is meaningful. I'm getting email responses from people off of my mailing list. I'm getting, messages and telling that are telling me that what I wrote to them was meaningful and that they felt a connection. And it wasn't because what I wrote was perfect or polished. It was because it was true. And that is the power of writing from your soul. It's not about proving something, it's about revealing something. And when ego and soul are in right relationship and in duality, then what you're going to write becomes, and you become unstoppable. So I've created this little tool for you to help you check in with yourself and see where you are in that like ego soul dance. And it's a little quiz. I don't know. I like quizzes. I remember being a little preteen reading teen magazine with all those like quizzes in the magazines. So I like quizzes. It's kind of part journal worksheet, part self-discovery ritual. And it's called Where is Your Ego Helping and Where is It Hijacking? So it's going to help you recognize when you're over editing out of fear, when your visibility blocks are in charge, and when your ego is actually being your greatest asset. So we like ego, it works well, but we just need to give it that new job, remember. So you can download that for free or just go view it on my website. I stuck it back on the Soul Whisper pages with that other tool I gave you in the last episode. So valerieeson.com/soul whisper pages. It's down at the bottom underneath that meditation from last week. So, if you are feeling ready to go a little deeper into this work, and if you know the book inside you is real, but fear is louder right now, I do offer soul strategy sessions. And those are 60 to 90 minutes, depending on what we need. It's just a sacred space between you and me. We talk about, what's being called to be written, what's standing in your way, what your resources are, what your next aligned steps could be. I like to create a little customized plan for you, dabble a little, sprinkle a little magic in there, maybe do a meditation. So that's what the soul strategy sessions are all about. You can book that by going to valerieeson.com/scheduler, or you can send me a DM if you just want to ask me about it. So remember, you're not behind, you're unfolding. Your story is sacred. The world needs to hear it. Your fear is human. It's ego. That's human. But your book is really waiting to get out there, to be medicine for the world. Um, so next episode, we'll talk about legacy, which is kind of a different word that you don't hear very often. It's not one that I use very much, but it keeps coming up in my world lately. So I wanted to talk a little bit about legacy, um, the kind that is heart driven, um, and kind of passed down in the pages of your work to the next um, line of people that need to hear it. Until then, be gentle with yourself. Be honest, radically honest. Be listening to whatever's coming up for you. And then we will talk about legacy next time. Bye for now.